Have you ever wondered what it was like to have a period 200 years ago? Let's travel back to the 1800s, a time without pads, tampons, or menstrual cups. What did people do? And how did they even talk about it? Well, the short answer is they didn't. In the 19th century, menstruation was shrouded in silence and stigma. It was considered a private, almost shameful illness rather than a natural biological process. It was often called the monthly sickness or the vapors, and many believed it was a sign of female weakness or delicacy. This secrecy created a world of misinformation. People came up with all sorts of wild ideas. One common myth was that menstrual blood was poisonous. It was believed it could wilt flowers, spoil food, and even make pickles go bad. Can you imagine being told not to get too close to the vegetable garden just because you were on your period? Another myth suggested that menstruating women were more susceptible to illness or even insanity. So activities like bathing, washing your hair, or even reading an exciting book were often discouraged. The fear was that any form of stimulation, physical or mental, could make the sickness worse. So, with all this secrecy and no disposable products, what did people actually use? The most common method was something called the rag and belt system. Women would use pieces of cloth, often old rags, flannel, or knitted fabric, which they would fold and then attach to a belt worn around their waist. Sometimes they would pin the rags directly to their undergarments. These cloths had to be washed by hand and reused every single month. Imagine the labor involved. It was a time-consuming and often unpleasant task that had to be done discreetly, usually hidden away from the male members of the household. Since there were no washing machines, cleaning these rags properly was a huge challenge. They were often boiled to try and sanitize them, but without modern detergents and hot water on demand, hygiene was a major concern. This led to a higher risk of infections and skin irritation. On top of that, these homemade solutions weren't very absorbent or secure. Leakage was a constant worry, which greatly restricted a person's daily life. Many women simply stayed home during their period, a practice sometimes called confinement, to avoid public embarrassment. This lack of reliable products effectively limited their participation in work, school, and social activities. Think about it. You might have to miss out on life for a week every single month. As the century progressed, we started to see the very first glimmers of change. Towards the late 1800s, some catalogs began to feature early commercial menstrual products. One of the first was the Lister's towel, introduced by Johnson & Johnson in the 1890s. It was essentially a disposable gauze pad, but it was considered too scandalous for most women to buy. Store clerks were almost always men, and asking for a menstrual product out loud was unthinkable for most. So, the product was a commercial failure at first. Another invention from this era was a rubber apron, designed to be worn under clothes to protect them from stains. While practical, it was also uncomfortable and sweaty. It's fascinating to see how the social attitudes of the time directly impacted innovation. The stigma wasn't just a social problem. It actively held back the development of better, healthier products for people who menstruate. The culture of silence meant there was no open market, no demand voiced loud enough for companies to really listen. Doctors of the era, who were overwhelmingly male, often had limited and sometimes incorrect knowledge about menstruation. They viewed it through a lens of disease and fragility, reinforcing the idea that women were inherently weaker. Medical advice often focused on rest and avoiding any activity, rather than providing practical solutions for managing periods. This lack of understanding trickled down into everyday life. Young girls often got their first period with absolutely no idea what was happening to them. Mothers were often too embarrassed to explain it, so a girl might think she was bleeding to death or had a terrible disease. This experience could be incredibly frightening and isolating. Education on the topic was non-existent in schools. It was a secret passed down from mother to daughter, if at all, whispered and cloaked in euphemisms. The journey from rags and belts to the products we have today has been a long one, shaped by social change, medical advancements, and brave individuals who dared to break the silence. When we look back at the 1800s, It's a powerful reminder of how far we've come in understanding and talking about menstruation. The simple act of buying a box of pads at the store without a second thought is a freedom that our ancestors could only dream of. The shift wasn't just about products. It was about reclaiming a natural part of life from the shadows of shame and misinformation. Thinking about this history makes you appreciate the conversations we can have today. We can openly discuss things like period pain, product choices, and conditions like endometriosis. While there's still work to be done to end period stigma completely around the world, we've made incredible progress. The silence of the 19th century has been replaced by voices demanding better education, better products, and better care. So, the next time you're on your period, maybe take a moment to think about the women of the 1800s, washing their rags in secret, and be thankful for the progress we've made. It's a history that reminds us why open conversation and education are so incredibly important. Thank you so much for watching and learning with me today. If you found this interesting, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more dives into history. See you next time